most recently, a couple months ago, for our Parks and Public Works staff. Currently, our administrative staff for the Parks Department and Public Works Department are located across the street in the at 127 East Cold Creek Drive. That's the building that we got from the districts when we took them over in 2003. They were using that for their kind of headquarters for the districts. It's worked out well for us. So we've been using it for almost 10 years now. It's worked out well, but now that our staff's getting to the size and the space, we don't have storage, and we're starting to outgrow that space. So we had talked about possibly getting some temporary modular buildings and putting them on this land that we purchased years ago, right west of Town Hall, and then either leasing that space out as office to somebody else, or we could just remove the building and just leave the land for sale at some point in the future, depending on how the town center goes. So
it's pretty claustrophobic in there.
yeah, it's pretty tight. It's a pretty tight space over there if you've been over there recently. But it's good land to have, to do something with in the future, whether we sell it or just continue to lease it out. But in the meantime, until things progress with the town center, I think it's a need that we have to move those two departments, admin staff, into some temporary offices here on this land next to us. So Alex and his staff, and Martin, along with Martin and his staff, have put together a brief presentation for the board, and we can have discussion and questions.
Okay. Alex Aronola with the Public Works Department, and Dave Heinrich has done most of the legwork in trying to lay this out and contact vendors and so forth, and we found out last Wednesday that Matt wanted to do this, so we've kind of put this together, and this is really just a preliminary thing to bounce some ideas off of you, and if you want to proceed, we'll come back with harder costs and renderings and so forth to show you what it's going to look like. But this is kind of a location that we had identified to show, this is 10 offices and a conference space.
Why don't you, in case there's anybody viewing, maybe give us a location of...
Location is, this is Town Hall now. We're across the hall. So this is Town Hall. This is the board room that we're in right now. Okay. This is the main reception area. So the hallway, we would knock out the audio visual room and IT room and create a doorway and a breezeway connecting the existing Town Hall to the new modular buildings. So this would be separate buildings connected with a breezeway, so we can go back and forth and send people right down the hall that want to visit us, so the reception could occur for our departments there. So this is what we have to do, is bring this in, build a breezeway, get all the electrical hookups and not. We haven't determined yet whether we want restrooms in there or not. We got to do that sizing, whether we use the existing restrooms or whether we need additional restrooms, but we could include those here if we needed to. As far as parking, if we needed more parking, we could add some additional parking on the site at this point. So
what are those blocks?
These blocks here?
Yeah, what are those?
These are offices.
Offices, okay.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 individual offices, a small conference room, and then some storage space around it. So it gives us a little more room now. Right now we have 8 offices over there, no conference facility to speak of, so, and no storage at all. This is the plan of the inside, showing the doorways, the conference room, and so forth. This could be exterior doors. They're exterior. Yep. This is some samples that we got from the vendor, and I'll show you some other ones for the specific site. Once we get a better feel if we want to proceed with this, we'll, get this, we'll pick out some colors and some exterior and come back with you. But we wanted to show you that these are modular buildings. In this case, their skirting doesn't look great. This is a little bit more upgrade in terms of the exterior with a nice roof and some brick around it. And this is another area. And there's a difference between
Yeah, these two are ground sets, so they're flush with the ground. How do they work?
They're flush with the ground, and this is kind of up with skirting around it. So there's differences in cost of whether you have skirting around it versus set down into the ground. Some of the costs, the fourplex with the 10 offices, there would be some initial costs of delivery setup, site and building improvements. We included about $30,000 for knocking out the IT room and relocating that. There's a lot of electrical equipment and so forth, and some building improvements. So initial startup cost is about $100,000 and about $28,000 per year for lease costs for the building, and we probably need a 5-year minimum lease. So it's kind of the cost we're talking about. The sixplex, and I'll go back to here, this option would be if we wanted to provide space, for example, the building department. Building department is over across in that old building, and right now, especially with development services or contractors that have to talk with us and have to talk to building, they come here, they get sent over to our building, and then sent over to the building department. So this could provide a one-stop center for the contracting, the building permits and the contractors and so forth. And the town center goes by, the next 5 years are going to be very busy with those types of people, coming to town hall. So just an option if we wanted to go a little larger and provide space for the building department to co-locate with Public Works and Parks. And those costs are shown here. If we did the little larger costs, we have a little more upfront costs, $120,000, and the lease costs would be, pro rata additional for that. So what we came here is just to bounce this off you to get your, feedback on the size of the building and what you'd like to see is if we go forward, if you give us the okay to go seek, actual contracts and come back with a construction contract, we would, do that and get all the homework done with the actual cost, what it would look like specifically to the site, and any other issues that occur as we go through the design process.
Okay, thanks. Anybody want to start? Chris?
Yeah, so I think the idea, it sounds good, and it makes a lot of sense to have everybody in one area, but with the fourplex plan, we're only gaining 2 offices and a conference room?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like that much to go through all that trouble to do that. Are the offices bigger? Or I would think that if we're going to do that, the space would be considerably bigger
Right.
to pack everybody in there, but only gaining 2 offices doesn't seem like that much.
Well, that's why I put the larger one in. I mean, originally, we had gone out, what would we need to replace what we have over there, and to provide, at least 2, we get 2 more offices and a conference room. Mm-hmm. And again, to do a sixplex, you probably get 4 or 5 more additional ones. So it's, some space for, additional growth if we need it, or to expand, have spaces out over there to provide adequate space for the employees and conference space and so forth.
And I would say that it would make a lot of sense to add that addition on the back for the, you said the building department? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then that's $3,000 a month additional expense, it seems like.
And this is,
We did that.
I took a guess here, I just prorated the space up, so we'll come back with actual costs. We were focusing on this, and then we kind of said, well, if we're going to do this, maybe we should think about the building department or others that may want to use it. So we'll come back with a figure that's more approximate to that particular size.
Okay, and then last question on the space that we're currently in there, we would keep that, but we'd lease that out?
Yeah, that's one of the options we have,
Not too keen on selling that unless we had a really clear plan of what we would do with that. And if we were to lease that, how much would we lease it for? And it would be for a 1-year term or a 5-year term or what?
I don't know what the leasing price we could get for it is. We can find that out if if it looks like we're going to move forward, we can definitely get that information, but I don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, when I reviewed this this week, the fourplex cost, just like you say, Chris, makes no sense to me. If you're going to make the move, make it that it's sufficient, that projects future growth, right? So I wouldn't be interested in that at all. But the sixplex, I definitely would be interested. I think it's about time.
think it's a fine idea, and I think we should continue pursuing it, but I'm not ready to commit at the moment.
So I had a question. So I think in the text it said that the building across the street was also a modular. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we somebody at some time purchased that from whoever sold the modular, put it together, or whatever. And do you know how much a purchase cost would look like? I mean, say that this is more of a permanent. Say we're gonna, even if we did something with town hall, like we lease, we move across the street, we sell it, we lease it, whatever.
I think an outright purchase, we did cost that out, and it was about $315,000 with all the, I think you have that on the spreadsheet. With the upfront cost of the site preparation, and then the fact you're purchasing was about $315,000 versus the upfront cost and the leasing cost.
You don't have to do that right now, but if this comes back forward, I guess I'd...
Yeah, if you want us to bring back
pros and
with
cons of...
Purchasing, we
Purchasing.
purchase outright purchase versus leasing.
And I think probably, I mean, I don't want to speak for Original Town, but I would think that they would want to make it look a little nicer, so we probably would do some architectural upgrades compared to just the standard siding and whatnot, so that it would be more character to the town.
Sure, that's the type of input we like to have, so we can come back with an appropriate...
I personally am not real interested in having, although my children have spent a lot of time in modular buildings at various school sites, but I don't think the town should get in the business of putting something that looks like that on our property.
I agree, totally.
So I'm just thinking that it might make more sense to actually just own the facility, given the, if it's a 5-year lease, well, that's a lot of money after a while, and might be more beneficial just to own the structure.
So own the modular structure or build a permanent structure?
I assume building a permanent structure would be, I guess you could, when you do the analysis, to come back and see what that would cost. I assume that would be a whole bunch more money, but that's just a guess.
I think that would be a good future discussion on, if we build a new town hall across the street, what are we going to do with this building and that property there? And could it be used for some of the other things that we've been discussing, like libraries and that kind of thing?
Right, we could either own it, or we could lease it or sell it to somebody who might want to, an insurance agency, or, who knows what, might want to buy this
I
property.
think, our idea behind a 5-year lease is that'll probably, even if we wanted to build a town hall today, it would take 2 or 3 years to get it, if it was a site over there. That's probably at least 5 years out to get, the roads and everything built and then design and build it. So we'll look at a minimum 5 years before you get into a permanent facility.
But it's at $37,000 a year for the 6,
Yes.
that's $185,000.
All right.
Just for leasing, you're not getting anything out of it in return.
Right.
That's a heck of a lot of money to me, that's...
And then you have to probably pay to have somebody take it away if that's what you want to do.
Right.
So-
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money to just lease something.
So that's why I'm saying that it might make more sense to actually just own the facility. And, say that we're here for 10 years, then it gives us a lot more flexibility and cost control.
Sure.
And I would really not want to spend a whole lot on this if we really, truly are moving across the street. If that's not an option, I think we should figure that out soon. Otherwise, I really don't want to spend all this money. Because it could be spent, somewhere more productive. I mean, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I understand you're crowded, and I want you all to have the best facility that you can to work the best way you can, but I just want to find a way how we can determine if we are going to move over there sooner rather than later.
So
Before
when
we
the-
make a big commitment.
So I hear that we probably want to hear more information about this. I don't think anybody's saying no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, when you come back, I'm not sure what your timeline looks like, but, how much does it cost to actually purchase it? How much would the architectural upgrades look like?
Sure.
Do a quick analysis of what a built structure would look like compared to the modular structure. What programming things could happen in here. What we could potentially lease our other building out
Right.
and, whether or not that would cover some of the cost. So,
And the lifespan on something like that, if we owned it and put it up back here, how long do they last for? Are they as long as any other building, or?
Well, the modular building over there, I believe Richmond Homes used as their...
Is there mortgage?
It's a
That's right, on mortgage.
They would do
Yeah.
closings there. So it's been there for
20 years?
over 20 years. So
There used to be 2 offices.
Yeah,
Oh, was there?
yeah, you're right. Is it storm-proof?
Is it stormproof?
Yeah.
So far?
you haven't heard any problems over there in terms
Yeah,
of...
we've been making some gutter repairs and other things. There are raccoons.
Raccoons are included in that.
So we've got it ready to sell.
or lease.
Please.
And I can't think of anything else that we would need in terms of an analysis.
I mean, can you sell that? I mean, is that what you're saying? If you decided
Yeah, we
to,
had 2 offers on it.
how much does it go for? More or less?
Wasn't it in like the 200 category?
Huh?
Just look in the,
That's
wasn't it in
something,
the
I think we should
200s?
discuss that a little more,
Any
though.
particular reason why we didn't take the offers, or?
Well, we didn't have where
We didn't have any place for them to go.
To put where the staff had nowhere to
Fair
go.
enough.
And I think the thought was, not exactly sure at the time what was going to happen across the street as far as development goes. The thought was, might be a good, valuable piece of property for some future use, office or something, and told.
Right, so the town, maybe that would be the place for a library annex. I mean, just keeping
Right.
your options open, I
Right.
think, is
Yeah.
important.
Does that
Why
go-
didn't Taco Bell want to be there?
Well, we had discussions about that because of Mayor Asty's house there, and what increased traffic, what kind of impact that would have on them and all that, so I think that's why one of the reasons why we decided not to go there, isn't it?
Does it pass fire code? Because it's pretty dangerous in there. It's like a labyrinth.
Just don't let the
I went there
fire
today,
department
and
in.
it's like a labyrinth. They're just trying to get back to your office and, I mean, seriously.
Might be certainly to get a fire.
Yeah. Do you have an exit for
Strategy to get out of the building in case there's a fire.
I mean, I'm very much in favor of everybody being here. I mean, I've been that way from the beginning. So.
And it provides, just like you said, better customer service, one-stop shopping, and you can just come in and sell here. So,
And the additional parking, because there are 6, 7 parking spots over there?
6.
We showed that other, that,
Yeah, but over there, I think there's...
No, across the street there are 7, so you could have those up here.
yeah.
That's,
Well, we have the parking spaces along this alley.
Yeah.
Here on the north side of that back lot. That's a
I mean, I wouldn't want you to lose parking, from
Right,
over
yeah.
there, so, yeah.
okay. What are you showing us here?
Is that a crypt?
Oh, yeah, these are other...
It's a mausoleum.
These are other photos that we put up, the hack sheet. So we took that fourplex and put some architectural renderings with it, some input from us, but we'll get better ones as we move along. Well, I appreciate those types of feedback so we can...
And did you need anything else that would be helpful for you? Or I want to make sure that we are as productive.
Well, I think that you're open to some of these things. I think that you asked a lot of questions, and we'll go back and try to answer as many as we can and come back with some better pricing and the alternatives of build versus lease.
And come back within reason, like within the next couple of months. I mean, don't take too long. Whenever you have the answers, let's set it up.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably my last question, was timing. Does the board want to move forward possibly, potentially, on something like this year, or?
Probably sooner than later. My guess is that especially for the building department.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I love the building over there, but it's not really conducive to the type of volume that potentially we might see in terms of new construction, so.
Plus, that would free up more room for the chamber, too, right? In that office, because they still have office.
Yeah, they have their tiny little back part of it.
Yeah.
And I would think because of the town center, we would consider hiring on specific positions.
Yeah, may need 1 or 2 additional inspectors for building and just construction inspectors.
Is that something we'd have to hire on the staff, or would we just?
No, we would
Contractor?
Yeah, we would contract.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that during the budgeting process,
Right.
presumably.
I
Okay.
guess that's the question, do you want to include that in the budgeting process? I mean, if you...
Yeah, there's some items in there already in the budget, in the
For
proposed
this?
budget.
For next
this.
year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay. Well, we have a gift of time here. Unless you
Yeah.
had something else that you wanted to go over.
I didn't. I thought that might take a little longer than I would have did, so.
Okay. Well, we could string
We
this
have
out.
half an hour.
If you like.
They're here, you can grill them if you want.
All right.
That makes up for the hour and a half past midnight. No, it
That's it.
doesn't make up for 2 days.
What's that?
Can public have any input on the subject?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We got plenty of time.
Gladys, you have 28 minutes, so...
Well, on this subject, I don't have,
Split it with George.
on this subject, I don't have that much to say, but in my 5 minutes, I will take the 28 minutes. Matthew, why in the H has it taken you so long to do this modular? I told you 5 years ago that's what you needed to do with this town hall.
You're a trendsetter and
You're a visionary.
fantastic vision.
I did. I told you 5 years ago you should have done the modulars on this empty lot out here. I don't know how the staff works over there.
They have to,
If you guys don't consider to have this done, I think you are just out of your mind.
We're considering it. Very,
I know,
Yeah, very much
but
so.
there is no reason
being
why
thorough.
that can't,
No, I'm ready to go.
that can't be done, because I've only been in the main lobby over there, but I've only seen... But, you know, they're cramped, and there's no reason.
Yeah.
When the grant was authorized for Grasso House, there was to be no offices in that building. So you've been in violation of that grant all this time by having offices over there. Anyway, do it
well,
now.
there's a jail over there. We could probably put the town board in it or something.
Excellent idea. Is that with you?
George, did you have anything about this, or
No.
just waiting for the... Okay.
I'll give you a break.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a 30-minute break. So, thanks, everybody. I will do some work.
activities that could go in a rec center or indoor community center. And it was fun, got a lot of good input, and looking forward to seeing that happen with the community. Let's see, we also saw an update on the El Dorado K-8 site, and we saw some bubble diagrams of what potentially could go on that site. And want to remind everybody that there is a community engagement meeting on Wednesday evening at El Dorado K-8 from 7 to 9 p.m. regarding that site and what they'd like to see there. And then I wanted to recognize one of our scouts. And it'd be nice if we could recognize every scout from Superior that became an Eagle Scout, but we saw a presentation by Max Lyles, who came in and presented to us how he utilized the resources and built the benches at El Dorado K-8. And I just wanted to give everyone an update that he did achieve his Eagle Scout, and he was voted on last week. So congratulations to Max Lyles. That is it.
Great, thanks. Let's see, I had just a few things. One, I got to go to 2 local restaurants recently, Sushi Yama and Wayne's Barbecue. Both were fantastic, and I encourage everybody to stop by and try them out sometime. And then a week or so, I went to the Jessica Ridgway Memorial Park in Westminster. It was moving, but they did a great job there. Really nice park, and they appreciated our donation. So wanted to pass that along. That's all I had. Trustee Williams.
I didn't attend any meetings, which was really nice. And I just wanted to remind everyone that next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday is the first Friday of the month, first Friday of September, and I have my first Fridays with Deb at Starbucks in Superior, which is the one next to Land Rover dealership. And my topics will be 2 things. One, it'll be about the El Dorado K through 8 land that we are looking at for ProStack, is doing a public and community input, and so I was hoping to get some input and bring that to ProStack for them. And then, of course, our ever hot topic, the town center, will also be my second topic. So that is from 7:30 to 9:30 next Friday, September, anyone know? 6th, September 6th, which is the first Friday of the month.
Nothing to report other than I have fully recovered from last Tuesday's meeting. So
Well done.
yeah.
Town manager?
I just have one item, I believe, scheduling. So our second meeting in September is scheduled for September 23rd. However, Beth and I will both be out of town that night, so I want to request the board that we move that meeting to September 30th, if everybody's okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
It's the 5th Monday in September, so we just so happen to have.
You wanted to be here to keep the board under control, is what you're saying?
Well, me or Beth, but she's going to be out of town too, so.
Where are you guys going?
Conference.
I'm good.
Yeah, I can.
Miss you.
I'm sure, yeah.
So we have a quorum no matter what.
Right,
So
yeah.
yeah.
And I believe I've spoken to the other 3, and I think they all 3 can make it as well.
Okay.
So, well, yeah. So,
Okay.
and that September 30th is when we would do the next Transportation Safety Committee meeting.
5 o'clock.
September 30th we would?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot in that agenda.
There is.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of them are just updates, though. So,
Okay.
that was it, Mayor. Thanks.
Thanks. Town attorney?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Town clerk?
No, I don't have.
All right, thanks. That brings us to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items.
George allows me to go first.
Very kind as always, George.
Gladys 4404 South 3rd Avenue, and I have 5 things, so I need my 28 minutes now. I want to know if item 7F, if I need to make comments on it now or at the time that that is discussed.
At the time.
Okay? Because I have several issues about that. I want to know when original Town Coal Creek Drive replacement will be made of the bumpy, dippy streets.
I don't have a time frame for you right now, but the Public Works Department is working to get those done this year still.
Great.
So.
Thanks.
About time for the snow to fly.
Right, yeah, trying to beat that, so.
I have hollered and hollered and hollered about an emergency exit out of the south end of Rachel Town, south of the creek. And I was told by the town manager, oh, the sheriff and I have arranged the fact that the gates will be cut, and that will be your emergency exit. Well, the evening of August 16th and most of August 17th, we were rather stranded in the south end of Original Town. I mean, we had the bomb squad, we had 2 robots, we had the K-9, there was probably 6 to 10 marked sheriff cars, there was probably 10 to 15 unmarked sheriff cars, and gosh, the gates didn't get cut for us to get out of town. Why?
So probably would be, well, unless the manager wants to answer that.
Yeah, so that was a shelter-in-place situation. It wasn't,
I know, they ordered me back in my house, they didn't do
Exactly.
reverse 1-1 to all of us.
the sheriff was not going to send out a reverse 911 for that situation because they went door to door to inform the residents.
No, they did go door to door.
That's,
They did
I don't
not?
care what they told you, they did not go door to door.
it was a shelter-in-place incident. They didn't want residents leaving their house if they needed to leave for some emergency reason.
I
then
did,
they
I got
were
out at
going to
6:15.
using the Second Avenue Bridge.
Okay.
But the trail got tore up alongside McCaslin because the gates weren't cut for us to go out.
There was no reason to use that access to leave. You had the Second Avenue Bridge.
I didn't use it. I'm just telling you because I have a message to deliver that I'm not going to because it's not very repeatable and it's not very high quality. But if you guys had to earn votes, you wouldn't get any from the south end of town after the 16th and 17th because that scenario was utterly ridiculous. So I think we need to get the situation organized about the emergency way out of town. Excuse me. I want to know when the August 5th, 12th, and 19th minutes will be ready.
All I can say is I'm working on them, and we'll have them done as I can.
Will they be before the next town board meeting?
I'm trying very hard to get them
I sent out an email this afternoon regarding the public hearing tonight. The email that I sent was illegal because of the fact that on page 2 of the July 29th, 13th minutes, the attorney stated that it is legal for people to come to meetings, to the public hearings and discuss their issues. Colorado Revised Statute number 3112-1091 clearly states that the public hearings, residents are to come to the meetings and discuss at the meetings, not via emails, at the meetings, that any issue that is on the town board that they are going to discuss. So therefore, this public hearing tonight needs to be declared a public hearing where residents can state theirs, because as it is now, it's in violation. So you need to correct that now. I'll be back when 7F comes up.
Can I make a comment on something that Gladys said?
Yes, Trustee Gross.
So, I mean, Gladys brings up a good point. When we've talked about emergencies, we always thought about a natural disaster like a flood or a fire. We've never thought about a situation like this. So that's something worth looking at next time, I think.
As far as...
Well, for a potential, emergency exit. We just never had this discussion before. We've always thought about a natural disaster scenario.
Right, and the sheriff's department, because of the situation and with the person barricaded in the house, and they had known him to have weapons, for the safety of the neighbors in the area, they were advising residents to stay in their homes.
Okay, so if there was a medical emergency, how is that handled then?
The sheriff's department would escort those individuals out of the area.
Okay.
So the only recourse for those residents is if they called 911?
Okay.
I guess it just feels you're trapped in your house.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, I would feel that way if I were...
I mean, it's like when you have a gunman in the area of a school, they lock down the school, have the shelter in place until they provide it, that it's all clear. I mean, they're trying to protect the safety.
No, I understand.
of the area.
Yeah.
It's a difficult situation, no doubt about it.
Okay.
George. Kufner. Good evening, Board, and absent members. I'm here to talk about the bridge. In 2004, Mayor, you were on this board, I brought a petition before the board of over 80 signatures of this residents of town that want a bridge put in across 3rd Avenue. This episode that happened a week ago Saturday should open your eyes up, and we put a bridge in immediately before we start any little building back here. I think it's a necessity now, since we've had this problem. It could have reoccur, there could be floods, there are all kinds of things for those 30 people, 30 households, maybe 35 households down on the south end of town, which would be 70 people plus kids, is how I'm looking at it. They deserve better exits than what we have one bridge. We don't need no $90,000 going to the Urban Renewal Authority for 2nd Avenue. We don't want 2nd Avenue disturbed. We just put $125,000 in that bridge in 1991. We want another bridge for another access up there, which we wouldn't have the problems that we had down there a week ago. I didn't see any of you down there. I was down there. The only one I saw from the
I came down.
The only one I saw from the town was Alex.
No, I came down, but you couldn't get past the police.
Well, that tells you something right there.
Not
Yeah.
going to be in the area.
I think it's time, Mayor, that you join the people in the town, go join them, and let's get some type of bridge across there. But I don't care if it's a one-way bridge this way and one way out the other way. Either way. But we will have an access in and out if it's emergency.
Okay.
And it was. Because I know. If you see the house, what was done down there, I'd say myself was uncalled for. Absolutely. It was like a practice game. That's not right. So, would you please give it a lot of consideration and get it in the budget? Let's get something started, not say, we're going to think about it. I've been told years that they would open the gates up there if there was an exit being down. Well, it's still a lot of problems. They didn't do that. They can't. It's private property. Come on. You don't want people running across your property. This is the town. Let's take care of it.
Thank you. Additional public comment? Okay. Seeing none, that brings us to 6 presentations. We don't have any this evening, which then brings us to item number 7, consent agenda. And remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 29, 2013 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the notes of the Historical Commission and the Open Space Advisory Committee. Actually, I had one typo that maybe I'll get with you at the end of the meeting. Approval of transfer of ownership for Kano Services, Inc. to its parent company, Convenience Retailers, LLC. Approval of liquor license renewal for Del Vecchio's Restaurant, and approval of an application for alcohol on public property. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Trustee Hansen, second. Trustee Williams. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. That brings us to what was F, adoption of a resolution approving an amendment to an agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control District regarding flood control improvement for Coal Creek upstream of McCaslin Boulevard for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1. Trustee Hansen.
Yep. So, the first question, kind of general, what is urban drainage interest in this? And what do they get out of helping us do this kind of thing, or any other community for that much? I know we had this discussion with them, but I just want to understand.
Alex Arenello, Director of Public Works and Utilities. Town of Superior is within the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, and part of your property tax goes to fund that district. So they're looking at the entire district, and they return some of those property tax revenues to each entity that they collect taxes within. And so they try to look at their whole region and try to make sure that each portion of the region gets a certain amount of their revenues back in projects. And so this is a project that we've been talking with them for a number of years.
Okay. So we saw that the estimated cost is increased, that portion of it's increased by nearly 50%. I just wanted to know why it went up by so much, $90,000 on that $100,000. Is it $100,000 line item? $200,000 line item, yeah.
Right. Originally, we had a project of $200,000. We put in $100,000. They put in $100,000. We spent about half of that on the planning that we've done over the last few years. So there's still some money left in that particular project. What we're doing now is trying to accelerate the planning and design to look at replacing the bridge next year. They don't have any additional funds to do that this year. They do have funds programmed next year. So this is just to accelerate the planning and design to get going, to see how far we can go with the planning and design this year.
So we have to pay a premium to accelerate the process?
Well, we are in effect paying a premium there. We may get that back if we may reduce. We have committed $600,000 to them over the next 3 years, and they've committed $600,000. So there's $1.2 million that's committed by the two entities. We're giving them another $90,000 to get the design done this year. If we can come up with a project, including the bridge replacement and flood control improvements, that's less than the $1.2 million, we may get some of that money back. So it's not. But if there's a project that we want to spend additional funds, we'll come back to the board and say we need that extra $90,000.
But we also may be stuck with that and pay it on our own.
Yes.
Okay, so, because we did have that maximum not to exceed, and that line item I thought was going to be split evenly, so I understand they don't have the resources to cover $45,000.
And in fact, if we want to build a bridge next year, we may have to accelerate funding and get paid for them. Their funding some of it comes next year, and then 13, 14, and 15 is when they budgeted their funds.
Okay, so when the project is all said and done, you're saying that there's a chance we may get that $90,000 back?
Yes.
And then on all the tasks, I think there was 9 tasks of Amendment 1. How many of those have actually been completed so far?
There's just been, they overran some of the design services that they have, so only about $10,000 or $15,000 has already been performed.
Okay, so of the 9 tasks, that is what, the first 3 or 4 tasks? Because it does say in there that this Amendment 1, all the tasks in Amendment 1 are supposed to be done by summer, and summer's over. So is it actually going to extend out to the end of fall? And if so, do we need to spend $90,000 now if these tasks aren't even going to be done until next year?
Yeah, it's task 9 that we've already spent. It's task 9. Additional support on the original contract. That it looks like $5,700 has already been spent.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, the second part of your question was?
So it's just how many of those tasks have been completed? Because they're supposed to, as I understood it, all those tasks were supposed to be done by the end of summer.
No, by the end of next year.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
well, I'm sorry, we're going to try to get as many of this stuff, many of these tasks done this year to get things in place so we can get the project underway next year.
Okay.
Where did you see that?
I'm sorry, I'd have to go through to the end. Does anyone else have any questions about this?
I have, just while you're looking, so there, I mentioned that I think $50,000 is, well, $100,000 maybe altogether, is needed for right-of-way acquisition, and is that just a placeholder, or is there actually right-of-way?
It's probably a placeholder, but we're going to need some easements if we do any of the flood mitigation work. We're doing any of the channel improvements. We'll need easements to do that work. And one of the things that we need is to get some maintenance easements, so we can spend money and maintain the creek channel over time. That's right. It's not being done now because urban drainage doesn't have the right to go onto this property and maintain it. So the hope is to acquire some of these maintenance, not maybe acquire it in fee, but acquire an easement to go onto their property to do maintenance in the future.
Okay.
There may be, if the bridge is larger, there may be some right-of-way, but it'll be small chunks for the existing, for the Second Avenue Bridge. But the rest of the right-of-way costs would be the easements to maintain the channel.
And would you have that, you need that with every property that is along the creek? Or do you actually, can you get in there?
Well, we'll look at all the properties that are adjacent where we need maintenance activities. We'll develop a plan for the flood mitigation and the extent of that, and then we'll determine which properties we need to get onto to maintain the property.
Okay.
So after task 9, a couple paragraphs down the schedule, it says, "It is assumed that the work performed under Amendment 1 will be completed in the summer of 2013. Final design is anticipated to occur in the fall of 2013. So I was trying to see where we are in that process of all those tasks. And if we're only through, say, task 4, and we still got 5 more to go, is it going to be complete by fall? Or are we not on track, and do we need to spend the money this year? Can we carry it into next year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to spend that $190,000 this year, but we wanted to get it covered in case we can accelerate things, and I think the board's desire is to go as fast as we can on this project. So we've covered it all this year, but to me, it'll probably drag on into early next year.
Okay.
That's why construction, we're hoping we can get to construction next year, but it might lead into 2015, depending on how quick they can get the design work done.
Okay, so let me rephrase it. If we don't have to, if we're not able to finish all the tasks in this year, do we still need to spend the $90,000 this year? And if we don't have to, will urban drainage have resources available to at least cover half of this, like we had assumed they would have?
Okay, I think the problem comes that urban drainage is the contracting entity, and so they're signing the contract with the design
Engineering
firm. And so they want all the money in the bank when they sign a contract. And
Okay.
that was the problem we had. And so they want us to put the money in the bank, like we did before. We put $100,000 in the bank, 3 years ago, and it took us several years to spend it. So they want the money in the bank, and then they sign a contract with the design firm,
Okay,
and that's why it's up front, and that's why it's issued.
all right. Matt, any thoughts on it? Do you have any comments?
To me, I think it's important to get the bridge rebuilt as soon as possible. So that's why I've asked Alex to kind of make this a priority for him and his department, and work with urban drainage to get this bridge. I mean, I hate to know that we could have constructed this bridge next year and didn't, and then we had a 100-year flood event and the
Right.
bridge is gone, so.
But there's no way to negotiate at least half of that to be covered by urban drainage. And they're just saying, no, we don't have the money. It's $90,000.
Urban
more, we
Drainage has
gotta
been
pay.
good to work with. I mean, they worked with us on the Rock Creek drainage improvements down by the wastewater treatment plant I don't know if it was last year or the year before that. And, so, I mean, we can have that discussion with them.
I think it would be worth having, because a couple board meetings ago, we went through several projects where we said, well, it's going to put us over budget on these, but we felt as a board that they were super important. So we said, well, we'll just take them from other projects. We think that these projects won't happen, or they'll be under budget, but we can't keep doing this with every single project that's 50,000 here, 100,000 there. It adds up. So if we could talk to them a little bit more and see if there's a way that we could split it half this year and see if they can come up with more money next year, great. But I certainly don't want to see the project scuttled because of that.
Or if they can just credit us for the construction cost, we're talking $1.2 million, so somewhere in there, they should be able to come up with some money. I do have to say that working with urban drainage is, we get the best bang for our buck compared to working with any other entity. Basically, it didn't work here, but essentially we're getting 50-50 cost share for a significant improvement, so. With that, I'm sorry, Trustee Williams, you had a question, sorry.
I've been patient. With the right-of-way or the acquisitions that have you talked to the property owners that would be affected by this? Have you been working with them?
We haven't, contacted them directly to purchase or acquire an easement. Several of them have been following this, some are in the audience today, that have known about the project and they understand about the maintenance easement and so forth. But we're going to have several meetings, public outreach meetings, to, again, explain what's going to happen on their property and to talk about trying to acquire easements for doing that.
Well, okay, I think the public meetings are important, and I agree with that, but I would highly encourage you to speak with all the property owners, either one by one or together in a room, in addition to the public meetings. I just want to make sure that they understand what's happening.
There's one-on-one meetings anticipated in this contract.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're reaching out to them separately in addition to the public process.
Yes, we'll be sitting down with each one, going over and walking their properties.
And one other thing, so with urban drainage, is the costs shared on 50-50 for the right-of-way at all?
They do, I know that they do spend money on right-of-way acquisition. I assume it would be the same for this as well.
Yes, it will be an eligible expense.
And that is included in this?
Yes, included in the 1.2 million, the overall project.
Okay.
Not in the 190,000 right now, it's just the design cost.
No, I know that. Okay, thanks.
Just to follow up on Trustee Williams' comments, I think when you do have the discussion with the residents, just to be sensitive and empathetic, you're talking about their land, and land that has been in their families for a very long time.
Yes.
So I know sometimes easements are necessary, but I think we need to be respectful and try to find a common language and some kind of collaborative effort. I don't want the town's kind of heavy-handed, we got to do this, and, too bad approach. I don't like that. So I'm assuming that you'll be at your best. Yes.
I'm going to raise one more issue. And if we can at all minimize how much right-of-way we need, especially for the access road or whatever you want to call it, if it's a path, and just kind of minimize that so that we're only taking what we need and not, expanding for large vehicles. Okay.
Okay.
All right, public comment regarding this issue?
I'm back. Gladys Morshi, 404 South Third Avenue. Yes, we have had a public meeting regarding this. Very vocal, and I'm sure the other ones will be very vocal also when we have those. To begin with, the traffic and something else committee.
Transportation.
Thank you. I'll get it right one of these days. Met and went over the site. Very fine-tooth comb we went over this site with one of the property owners,
Yes, we did.
the one that is going to be affected the most on this project. And I made sure they knew about this meeting tonight, because town staff has not contacted them. They did not know that this meeting was going to have this discussion tonight, so I wanted to make sure that they knew it. The design that the urban drainage has is absolutely unacceptable by us residents. Absolutely unacceptable. If you will, look at page 8 of the, of this section F, 7F. Let me get my papers, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared.
Is there's not a design yet for this bridge, is there?
Pardon me?
Is there a design for it?
No, you have not seen that. We had that at the meeting, our resident meeting, but you have not seen that.
Yeah, because we had talked about having a few different options, a box culvert or another type, but
That's right.
that's something we're going to see down the road.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
On page 8 of the let's see, is it management? No, not management finances. Management of construction section, page 8, it talks about Superior Metropolitan District. I want to know the financial cost impact of original town South Addition residents through SMD1 regarding this project. Is there going to be a cost to residents regarding this project?
I'll speak, it should be covered under the SMD number 1 in general, so everybody's covered the same.
And so, original town residents, the only thing that we pay for SMD1 is the storm drainage? Is that the only fee that we are charged regarding SMD1?
Let's see, so there's water and sewer is dealt with independently, and you get water bills. And then presumably you have a stormwater fee.
And that's the only thing that original town South Addition residents are going to have as far as,
Yeah, there's no difference.
all right. Then on table, and there isn't a page number, but on table ES1, excuse me, it has a breakdown, US 36 to McCaslin Boulevard to 2nd, upstream to 2nd Avenue. Residents want no maintenance trail. We want no trail at all along that south, along that creek. And the town board needs to understand that very, very clearly. Now, of course, there's not only the one property owner, but there's also the estate now that's going to have to be dealt with Charlene's property. So those should be the two biggest property owners. There's a resolution in here for you to pass tonight. I'm asking that you do not approve that tonight because there are many issues to look at, and that you do not approve Resolution SMD 1-6, Series 213. Within this packet, in the urban drainage, it states that there is going to be core drillings on that creek, which is going to violate the water rights of residents. Now, I have hollered and hollered and hollered about water rights, and I'm suggesting that this time you better listen, because you're going to affect the water tables, and it has in here that there is going to be water tables affected. So you better look at that very, very, very closely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Trustee Williams.
So if we don't approve this, You don't get your Second Avenue Bridge.
I understand that, but there's things that the town board needs to look at
Okay.
before this resolution is passed, before you move on down the road.
And so this is for design only, so, I mean, we have to...
And the residents do not like that design.
Okay.
And part of the design is this core drilling, which is going to affect the water rights.
So what design are you referring to?
Well, there's several designs that we were shown at this residents' meeting. We don't want a bridge that is in this table ES-1. It says that there's a 53-foot span with a 10-foot high bridge. We don't want that. And we looked at that. When the traffic committee was out there, we looked at that scenario.
All right, I'm going to ask a couple more questions of Alex.
Just Hanson, did you have a
Yeah,
question
just
for
what
Gladys?
are
or-
the core drillings for?
Alex?
And I would say that to base any decision tonight on designs that have been circulating is premature because I haven't seen anything. And that's going to be, I'm sure that's going to be thoroughly discussed when we see these 3 or 4 different designs.
I suspect the board will have a thorough conversation, as is the board's
Yeah.
general practice.
Just to respond, the table Gladys was referring to was in the original agreement. They were modifying, so we've done a lot of planning work since that original agreement. That she was referring to a table that was included in the original agreement, and that was referring to a study that was done 10 or 15 years ago about here's some options for mitigating flood control in this core. So I don't think we're locked into that. That was in the original one. We're just amending it, saying to put some more money into it and to do further planning and design work. The core samples were in there specifically for the bridge. If we build a new bridge and we need to put abutments down, we need to know what's underneath. And so we were doing had some funds in there for core drilling to know what soils we were going to, put the abutments and other things.
Right.
And if there were retaining walls if we needed walls for the flood control channel, for example, those were the core samples were needed to be able to tell us what kind of soils to build something on.
Okay.
Where those core samples will be taken will come after we pick the bridge that we're going to design, we pick where the walls will go and so forth.
Okay, so Ms. Force, you brought up a big point that, we went through this when Remington came through, and we had big concerns about the potential water rights and draining wells and all that kind of stuff. Will this have any kind of impact at all by doing these core samples on any of the wells?
Core samples are really geotech type of core samples to determine what the soils are,
Right.
where we're going to be building things. They're not permanent, they're not a well of any sort.
So there's no impact on the wells in town?
I would think not. I mean, we get a core sample and then we fill it in with dirt after we find out what's in the sample.
Trustee Williams?
So what I want to ask about is all the different designs. How many designs are you planning to have forward for the board?
Right, we've included at the board's request to look at a clear span structure and to look at a multi-cell culvert. You gave us the feedback that you probably didn't want to do the multi-cell culvert, box culvert type of design. You wanted more of a clear span. But we wanted to carry those through just to show you what the differences in cost would be. So those are the 2 alternatives that we have in the design process that we've identified.
Are those the 2 alternatives we've seen before? I mean, is that what Glass is talking about? Are those the others that she's seen that are circulating?
That's identified in the table. I guess they're similar to that,
Okay.
but we would size the opening based on our latest flood modeling of what we need to pass the 100-year storm.
And which design requires the most amount of right-of-way?
Well, probably the clear span.
Okay.
May be a bigger structure, so it may require a little bit more in terms of right-of-way.
So is there a third design that we could look at that would still be within a structural 100-year floodplain design that would take less right away?
I could pose that question to the design engineers. Is there another one, and, is there additional cost to evaluate that? I can certainly pose that question.
I think that's a great question, and something to keep in mind when we get to the point where we're going to review the different design options.
Especially for another 90 grand.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we'll be coming to the board several times with concepts like that and to address those types of answers, because we had that discussion, and you gave us some feedback about some of those photos, so we're trying to incorporate that, and we'll be back several times with those type of design issues.
Okay, so we may hopefully be seeing a third one.
Sure.
Okay.
And my recommendation to the board is, understanding Gladys's issues, is that we move forward with this because it's something that needs to happen. I think I'll look back at this, I think as Alex said, or perhaps Matt said, that, there's a significant flood, took the bridge out, and then there's minimal ability to get out of town. So this is not approving $600,000 expenditure, but that it's at least moving us farther down the road so we understand what are the options that are available. So, George.
George Kupner, Superior. I want the board to understand, and the people, this town does not want this design. It is being pushed down on our throats by the staff. Taking out the trees, making a V-wide thing, putting boxes in. All we ask for is another bridge, not a new bridge, not an expensive one down on a one-way bridge is what it amounts to. We don't want that. Can't the board understand this, what we want? We went to a meeting, we saw these designs, and we haven't said we disliked them. Let's stop there and get what the people want, not what the staff wants. I'm tired of saying we're going to build another bridge on 2nd Avenue. We don't want that. Period. We don't want to spend no more money on it. We want another access, people. Let's understand that.
But, and once again, I try not to be argumentative, but what urban drainage wants is to prevent floods occurring within original town and the whole urban drainage area. So they're gonna need they'll have requirements about what they're gonna need to have done so that they have fulfilled their job. We can say, no, we don't want any of your money, and leave it like that, but I'm not sure I'd recommend doing that. Sorry.
Pat Kaprowski, 208 3rd. My property extends, Coal Creek runs through my property south to the east of the bridge. The box culvert design that was presented would basically just eat up the entire east end of my property. So I would really encourage a girder span option that would allow the flow, at the same time trying to preserve as much of the east end of my property as I can. So, regarding that initial design as well, it encroached up 80% of my property to the north, which just basically rendered it completely useless. So what I am open to would be some clearing in the creek bed and clean up the bank basically where it is, and I'll try to be as reasonable as I can with that to let the project go forward, but it's just completely unacceptable as presented in February, then again in April. Again, I won't try to hold up the bridge project, anything like that, but I am the most affected in town. As far as sales of any portion of my property, it can't be. I mean, the reason I inherited that property is because I was going to preserve it, protect it, and just keep it as is. That's the agreement I made with my grandfather, and it would actually cause legal issues between me and my siblings if I were to try to even sell a portion of it for this. So I think a better solution would be for everybody to get on common ground. I'll allow some bank work in there, and I would just allow access versus having to sell part of the property for maintenance access. I'll let you on my property, if we come to some sort of agreement. So I'd much rather see that approach. Public access on my property, bike trail, anything like that, which appeared to be part of that original design, is no. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Additional public comment? Trustee Williams?
Can I talk to Alex one more time? So could you possibly address his concerns?
Yes, I mean, we have all the public comment that we took, and we heard his concerns, and we'll be addressing those as we go through the process. I mean, we had an initial plan, you saw it, I mean, a lot of that was Second Avenue, Third Avenue, all that. You made some decisions on that, and you gave us some marching orders. So we're just going the next steps, and we've heard from that property owner and others about, how it's going to be impacting their property. So we're going to respect those comments. There are going to be some trade-offs. Obviously, George wants the bridge in a different place, and I think the board looked at that several times, and you gave us some direction on that. So we took the public input, your input, and as well as several other committees, and tried to incorporate them in our marching orders to the consultant.
So is there any way that there can be an agreement without having to basically purchase 80% of his property? Is there some agreement that can be reached without acquisition?
In his particular case, there may be. I mean, we're not, I think he's given us his opinion of how we can still accomplish our goals and not disrupting his property, and we'll try to see if that makes sense and if we're okay with that. I mean, we want to work with these property owners. We don't want to ram it down their throats.
Exactly, and I can't imagine having to give up 80% of my property if I were a property owner, just for a bridge. I mean, I know we all need the bridge, but I can see both sides, so.
Right, and he's downstream. I don't think he's as impacted by the Second Avenue Bridge. He's downstream of that or upstream of it.
Right, and I'm just concerned that we're forcing him to sell most of his property, so I don't want to see that happen, and I'm hoping that we can work some kind of agreement.
Yes. we will.
Okay. Additional public comment regarding this? More board comments or questions? Board action? Trustee Hansen?
I'd like to make a motion to Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD 1-6, Series 2013, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement with Urban Drainage and Flood Control District for Cold Creek improvements upstream of McCasm Boulevard.
Motion by Director Hansen. Is there a second? Director Williams, further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
So in order for this to pass, do you need 4 votes, or is there 4 of us here, or is it?
Just majority.
Just the majority, I think.
Majority of who's present.
Right, correct.
Hanson?
Yes.
Williams?
And I'm saying yes for 2 things. One, I want to make sure that we have alternative designs so that it takes up the minimum amount of right-of-way acquisition, whatever, and that we also are going to work with the property owners here. So I say yes.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes.
Gregores?
It's a reluctant yes. I agree with Trustee Williams. It is a yes, but I just want to make sure that even us as trustees are included in this discussion with the property owners. Okay.
Well, because we'll have to spend $600,000 to approve the project, so it's for sure coming back around.
Yeah, I mean, just even when you have the negotiations, when you're talking to property owners, I mean, Deborah and I walked the land, we've been to his property, and we just want to make sure it's preserved as much as possible.
Very good. Thank you. That brings us to item number 8, approval of a liquor license renewal for Rock Creek Wine and Spirits. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. Typically, these liquor license renewals are put on the consent agenda for the board's review. However, the state of Colorado Liquor Enforcement Division issued a violation notice to this particular business owner, so we thought we would place this on the regular agenda so that the board had an opportunity to speak to the owner with regard to their application if you so choose. Rock Creek Wine and Liquor and Spirits, the owner's here tonight. They have owned the business since 2003, to our knowledge, our records. This is their first violation in 10 years. The Sheriff's Department is recommending renewal of the application, and with that, we'll just open it up to either board action or questions and comments.
And the state of Colorado already took action on this,
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, very good. Questions from the board? I might ask the owner if he wants to speak to this particular issue. Okay. I guess I might have a question. But what practices have changed since this issue came about? So I don't know if you can answer that. And just name and business address, perhaps.
Yeah, my name is Stanley and owner of Robbie Kwai Liquor Store, 1611 Cotton Road. And about 6 months ago, my store, we have a mistake and my worker, and when she sell and one fall back for my cranberry, she forget ask the girl for ID. She just asked her, you 21? She said yes. She think that enough. That's why after she sell for her, and she get out the door and believe undercover coming, give her the ticket. We own this store here over 10 years. This was the first time we got mistake.
Okay.
We're very sorry about it.
And what changes have you implemented since that time?
Yeah, we after we have a mistake and we send the worker, but they go to school again. Yeah, go to school in Lafayette. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from
Is
the
it
board?
school, like it's serving school, how to properly check IDs and that kind of thing?
Yeah, we train. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I had.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other board discussion or action that you would like to take?
Where is that? Okay. I'd move to approve liquor license and renewal for Rock Creek Wine and Spirits for another year.
Okay, motion by trustee Henson, second by trustee Gross. I take liquor licensing with great concern, and when there's violations, that always concerns me. That being said, I think it's been a very good business. One infraction over the course of a decade, I don't think should boot you out. So I'll be in favor of that as well. So, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. With that, we're off to item number 9, which is a continuation of the public hearing and approval of a resolution approving a substantial modification to the Superior Urban Renewal Plan by authorizing implementation of tax increment financing within the Superior Town Center urban renewal area. Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. The Superior Urban Renewal Authority was formed in 1995 to help facilitate future development within the Superior Marketplace area, Town Center area, and it also included in that area was Original Town. As part of the plan that was adopted in 1995, a sales tax, tax increment financing was passed to help facilitate the public improvements that were needed for the Superior Marketplace development. In 2006, the town approved the First Amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan to add properties in the Town Center project area, including Biela, Menkik, Spicer, and Shuck, and Aweta properties. These were done to help facilitate any future development that might take place over those areas. The Second Amendment that you're reviewing tonight is to implement the tax increment financing, the time period, there's a 25-year time period for the tax increment financing, and tonight's proposed amendment would do that. In 2006, when the properties were added, the TIF was not implemented at that time because we did not have a development in place for those properties. Now that a development is in a developer has submitted an application, it's been approved. We're asking the board to approve the Second Amendment to implement the 25-year time period for the TIF.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add that the Planning Commission reviewed this back in April, April 30th, and recommended approval of the Second Amendment to the town board. The applicant's here tonight with their attorneys, as well as, of course, Kendra is here to answer any questions the board might have with regard to this.
Thank you. And I should ask, I don't know if the applicant has any comments they wish to make. Okay. So board questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
No.
there's a strange typo that I've now fixed, and I just wanted to let the board know about it on page 2. For some reason...
Of the cover memo,
there-
or?
No, of the actual plan amendment, there's a return in the middle of the word may.
Right.
So I fixed that. I just wanted the board to know. I'm not sure how that happens, but...
Where are you? I'm
What
sorry.
page?
Page 2, subsection 3
Of the actual agreement.
of the actual plan amendment.
Oh, I see,
There, I don't know.
The
how
ma.
that- I just, yeah, it says ma, and then it has y on starting two lines down.
Okay.
That's been fixed.
All right, thanks.
And I'll
All right, thank you. Questions from the board? Trustee Hanson?
So Matt, if we approve this tonight, the clock starts tonight?
Tomorrow, yes.
Tomorrow? Okay. So the bulk of the TIF payback is going to come from property taxes, right?
That's correct.
But up to 25% of the southern portion, there's will generate some sales tax revenue that will go towards this.
25,000 square feet.
Oh, 25,000 square feet.
Right.
So is that the maximum it would be, or could it actually end up being more than that? Or is it-
That's the maximum that the TIF would apply to for the sales tax. Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see. So do we anticipate spending an entire, we've approved to pay up to $110 million, correct? Or somewhere thereabouts.
That's the max, yeah.
And realistically, I mean, do we expect to do that much, or do we think it's going to be more like 90 million or less than that?
It all depends. I mean, it depends on, parking structures is a large amount in there. So if you just build one parking structure, just for argument's sakes, then the cost would be less than that. So, I mean, it's going to depend on, and it's going to depend on the pricing that we get for the improvements at the time, and
Right.
there's a various number of things that could affect that.
Okay. So we heard lots of comments about that spending that kind of money on public improvements is outlandish. I mean, I don't know how we compare this project with any other project, but, how do we quantify those claims? I mean, is it possible to do that? I mean, does this seem like average? This would be normal to spend this kind of money on public infrastructure, parking structures, all that kind of stuff?
For public improvements?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've provided the board with other developments in the Denver metro area that, range anywhere from 30 to over $100 million in public improvements, depending on the size and what's included. This is unique because of the amount of parking structures that are needed, and floodplain mitigation, and soil mitigation, and, utilities that are needed. So I think we've looked at the numbers. We sent out our estimate for public improvements. We're comfortable with that, and it's close to that number.
Okay. And then, is there any scenario that this TIF, when all is said and done, say we spent $110 million, or we approved $110 million, is there any scenario that we would actually pay that off sooner than 25 years? Or once it's set, it's done, and you just go with it?
No, I mean, for instance, in the marketplace, I think it's anticipated that the revenues generated from that project are going to allow for those improvements to be paid off 1 or 2 years sooner than we anticipated. So, I mean, the revenue, depending on how quickly the project moves and the revenue comes in, you could see those improvements paid off sooner than 25 years.
Okay.
But it all depends on the market and how quickly it develops.
Okay. That's good for now.
So there's no prepayment penalty of any kind? No.
I mean, you can call the bonds at certain times, depending on, but
Actually, can I ask about that? We don't own the bonds.
Right, that's
How could
correct,
we
yeah.
call any bonds?
That's correct. I was thinking of the marketplace. Where
Yeah.
This is financing that's going to be issued through the developer. The town is just pledging revenue towards it.
Trustee Williams?
So there's some language in here that makes it sound like it's binding the town to all of the property taxes and sales for the next 25 years. And it says any, let me see where that is. Bear with me here. Let's see here. On page 127 is the best I can do here for you guys. Under 5A, tax increment financing, it says the authority is specifically authorized to expend all or any portion of the revenue from the town center property, tax increment, and then comma, all or any portion of the revenue from the town center sales tax increment. Is there any way that we can reword that?
I'm not sure we would want to. This isn't requiring that all or any, either one of the revenue be spent on this particular project or go to this particular developer, but this language is what we need so that the authority has the authority. So the Superior Urban Renewal Authority has the authority to spend the money on all of the purposes enumerated in the urban renewal law. So this is necessary language to have in.
So does this bind us to all
No.
or not?
No.
Okay.
What it means is that SURA gets it all. But it doesn't require SURA to spend it on any particular thing. What it allows SURA to do is spend it on anything that's eligible for it to be spent on under the urban renewal.
Okay. So, for instance, if it were 50%, this wouldn't bind us. Or if it were 100%, this would not bind us.
True. Exactly.
Either way.
Exactly.
Okay. Hold on, I have a number of things. Under 4C1, Section 3C, Financing TIF Area, Method 1, all financing methods legally available to the town and/or authority and/or the
Sorry,
SM...
can you give me a page?
Okay. 124, page 124.
Okay, thank you.
4C1?
4C1, got it.
4C1, all financing methods legally available to the town and/or authority and/or the SMDs and/or the developer may be used to finance the public improvements. So in the past, we have not called out and/or the developer. It's always been the town and/or the authority and/or the SMDs. So why are we calling out the developer here? What legally is happening to this?
I think this is just to clarify that when we pledge the revenue, the developer can use any financing method available to it with that revenue that we're pledging.
But in the past, on other amendments, we've not done that. We've not had that language.
Right, and the prior amendment in 2006 did not implement the TIF, and there was no particular developer.
Okay, so prior to that, let's go back further. That was not, and you had the Superior Marketplace at the time.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just wondering, why is this in here?
It's pretty typical. I'm not sure why, if it wasn't in 1995, I'm not sure why. I was not involved in drafting it in 1995.
So, walk me through legally here, when the TIF is implemented, it goes into the authority, right? The Urban Renewal Authority.
SURA gets it first.
There's an account
Yep.
up in the sky over here. And then it gets funneled to whoever, like the developer, the SMDs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that language isn't really needed, is it?
I believe it is.
But the authority is the authority that implements the financing, correct? And doles out the money?
No.
No, we don't implement the
that's the
financing.
disconnect. No, the authority,
Okay.
SURA does not implement the financing. SURA pledges the revenue to someone who then implements the financing. SURA doesn't finance.
But SUR collects.
Exactly. Collects and distributes.
Okay, so let's get the right words then.
Right.
So SURA collects and then it distributes.
Right.
So what is this statement saying right here? Is it saying that SURA is collecting it and/or the developer and/or the SMDs and/or?
No, that's not what it's saying.
No, this is talking about financing.
May be used to finance the public improvements or any other cost described or anticipated in the plan or related in any manner in the development of the TIF area. So this has nothing to do with actually doling out the money or collecting it.
Exactly. This is giving everyone the authority for, because maybe I misspoke before. SURA could finance if it wanted to. In this case, with this project, that's not what anyone is proposing. This authority gives everybody the authority to take full advantage of the financing that will be available. This does not this doesn't cover the distribution of the proceeds of the TIF. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
And so it gives any one of these authority?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's, again, assuming that they have the money to use for the financing.
Okay.
The first step is that SURA would have to distribute the funds to someone. Then what that's saying is those TIF funds can be used for any type of financing under the urban renewal law.
Okay. Next thing. I'm on page 124. It's just above, and I believe it's under 1.5 or whatever you want to call it, section 1A5.
What page are you?
124, just up above.
It's 124, the paragraph number 5. The numbering is confusing because of the way this amendment is.
Yeah, it is really
It is.
messed up. General Objectives, 2006 edition. Okay, that's the little title there. And it does say here, develop a public center, comma, a transit-oriented development, comma, provide appropriate access to all areas of town. It's basically outlining what we're going to do with this money. Correct?
Yes,
Okay. So I would like to propose, when it says develop a public center, I would prefer it say develop a public town center.
Okay.
Because I don't know what a public center is.
And this was language originally in the 2006, but
Okay.
I assume the developer has no issue.
No objection.
Okay. All right. Then I would love to have that, if everybody else agrees.
I'm sorry, but then later on in that paragraph, it also talks about, it says, go down a few lines, such as improvements to reduce the floodplain area, improve traffic flow, develop a public center. Would you like the word town there as well?
Sure.
To be consistent? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there's other locations in the document.
That's
Yeah.
clarifying.
Because, I mean, that is partly what we're doing here, a big part of what we're doing here. And if anybody else has any other questions, I will formulate my thoughts on the rest of my stuff.
So I have a couple of questions. And maybe I'm thinking about this too much, but shouldn't this be contingent upon passing a cost-sharing agreement and/or related to pulling the first FDP, just so that the clock doesn't run until we actually need it to run?
We've already discussed this with the developer, and this was a determination that we made that the TIF clock should start now rather than waiting for the FDP. There are a number of reasons for that, and I'll let Carolyn speak to some of them if
Okay.
you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
It just seems like it's in your best interest to delay the initiation of the clock, but I clearly am not understanding something.
Mayor, Town Board, Carolyn White with the Brownstein Hyatt firm in Denver, on behalf of the developer on urban renewal issues. You know, it's really a strategic consideration. There are a variety of reasons why you would want to wait and not turn the TIF clock on until the project is really ready to start. But there's also reasons to try to get it started sooner rather than later in terms of assuring lenders and financing and so on that the project is real. It is true that what you're doing now is just authorizing yourselves to later enter into a cost-sharing agreement by which you may or may not agree to share the tax increment revenue with the developer. And if for some reason that falls through, you could always go back and amend this and turn it back off. But with the legislature coming into session in January and a lot of discussion about potential amendments to the urban renewal statute, in order to ensure the security from a bond opinion perspective, that there is no legal reason under, in terms of what the legislature might do that might change your ability to do this, I think we are in agreement with the town council that it would be advisable for both the town and us that you go ahead and start the TIF clock now.
Okay. And how do you turn the clock off? That's not one I've ever heard of before.
The mic lost there.
Carolyn, I'm not sure you can turn the TIF clock off. Maybe. We would certainly try, but it's not a guarantee.
Okay.
There's no provision in the statute for turning the TIF clock off once it starts. But if for some reason this stalled or didn't go anywhere, we would certainly try to. But I can't say for sure that we can turn the TIF clock off.
And I would add that, as Carolyn just mentioned, with the uncertainty of what's going to come forward with the legislative session coming up.
That was very helpful, because I didn't really understand
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
this is a political calculation based upon what the legislature may or may not do.
Yes.
Okay, that clarifies it in my mind.
Helps a lot.
Trustee Williams, and then I have a few more, but...
Okay, so I'm going to clarify something here. So with the TIF funding and then the metro districts, the metro districts are in addition to the TIF.
Exactly.
Okay. And do we know how much that amounts to, over and above the 109?
Well, the metro districts have the authority to impose their own property taxes up to 50 mils. But are you looking for, I don't know a total number?
It would be unknown until the assessor calculated what the assessed value is.
Okay, so the metro districts are used to pay down the TIF, is that correct?
Not the TIF.
Not the TIF.
No,
They'll be
Okay.
used to build things that aren't covered by the TIF,
Correct.
presumably.
So they're not subject to public improvements that a SURA is subject to with the TIF. Is
There's
that
probably
correct?
special district law that governs this.
Special districts can only spend their tax revenues to construct public improvements as well. They are limited. Different sets of statutes, but they are similarly limited. The tax revenue to the district can only be spent on public improvements as well.
Okay, so is there any possibility that the metro districts would not be levying anything?
I would speak to the developer, I would ask the developer about that. My suspicion is no.
Well, the predicate to your question is there any possibility? So I have to answer that. Yes, there's probably some possibility. There's none that we've contemplated.
So you anticipate more than 109 million in public infrastructure improvements?
Well, that goes
Someone else
to
is going like that.
That goes to a completely different issue. The answer is yes, very likely to that question. But at the very beginning, we also have to focus on our bonding capacity. And so you have to look at the TIF and the Metro District as two different sources of increment that will be used to collateralize bonds. And that's why we need to use both, because the TIF comes in and the tax increment, the tax increment comes in, and the Metro District proceeds, they come in slowly and after development occurs, and we need the money up front to accelerate the development and to build the infrastructure necessary to accommodate the development. So we use as many sources as we can to collateralize, provide collateral to issue bonds.
Anybody else have any questions? I'm going to keep thinking about that because I'm going to have more questions, guaranteed.
So I have,
By the way, Randy Goodson, RC Superior.
yes, sorry, my bad. So in the cost-sharing agreement, will there be an outline of what the this goes to questions I had last go-around, but which will outline what the Metropolitan District is responsible for and what tax increment financing would be responsible for?
Honestly, I haven't seen the cost share, have you seen a version of the cost sharing agreement? I'm not sure how much detail that will go into, but that will include the pledge from SURA to pledge the TIF revenue for eligible improvements.
Fair enough, but I guess my request would be when that comes around that I'd like to see what, more than just that you're going to commingle the funds to provide the collateral to pay down the bonds. I'd like to make sure that there's some identified parts that the metropolitan districts are specifically paying for and what the TIF is paying for. And maybe both of them are being paid for, so that would be very helpful for me.
And I 100% agree. I was going to ask that. As I was sitting here thinking about it, I'm like, you're asking exactly what I want to see. And I'd like to see that in conjunction with the cost-sharing agreement. I need to see that at the same time in order to be able to move forward.
Okay. And then getting to my question about how the interest rate is calculated, that there's an up to amount, but I still can't quite figure out how that interest rate is going to be calculated. And I assume it's just a market-based, what you can sell your bonds at, but you're shaking your head, so maybe...
Where are you in the specific spot in the...
I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, no, these are just general questions.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't think it's in this document, but...
No, I think this would be more related to maybe the cost-sharing agreement or whatever, but once again, I just need to understand what these instruments are.
Larry Hirschfield for the developer, the applicant. So there's a couple points. One, there's a bunch of economic limits on how many bonds we can issue. One is the interest rate. The higher the interest rate, the fewer bonds we can issue because you have the same amount of tax increment to pay back an amount of money. And the higher the interest rate, the less proceeds we get. But the interest rate would be set by the market.
So just, I'll stop you there, and maybe maybe you just answered my question. So it's in your best interest to limit,
to lower the interest rate.
To lower the interest rate.
Absolutely.
Because you are able to pay for more things and not eat that up with interest.
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you have a few more things, but...
Go ahead.
So, and I think maybe, I don't know if well, I'm just going to ask this. Say, for example, the town wanted to build a recreation center in the town center project. And to pay for that, we would want to raise our property tax mill levy so that we could accommodate that, because that's probably the only way we could really do that. So my question is, if we raise our property tax mill levy from the base, whatever it is right now, would that then flow into SURA, into the SURA for TIF?
Yes.
Or could that be carved out somehow so that everybody would be paying for the recreation center if we decided to build that?
Right now, it would all be included the way this is drafted. That's how I understand it. Is that your...
So that potentially would cause a lot of difficulty for us if we decided that we wanted to build a recreation center, because only a portion of the town would be paying for that. Is there a way to deal with that issue?
Mayor, if I may, Carolyn White again, it would be my recommendation that if you wanted to do something, that would be something we might, along the lines of what you just discussed, that would be a carve-out that would be addressed in the cost-sharing agreement.
Okay.
All you're doing...
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I understand that, so I'm just trying to when that cost-sharing agreement comes forward, that we've discussed at least some of these issues, so I totally agree.
All you're doing in here is authorizing yourself to later enter into an agreement by which you might pledge the TIF revenue for various things. The SURA doesn't even really have the authority to do that right yet because you haven't granted yourself the power to receive tax increment.
Totally get
So
it.
that's all this
But
is.
when the cost-sharing comes forward, I just want to make sure that that's identified.
Okay.
That's something to discuss, because I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot, because some people have a vision that we would want to build a recreation center here. And
You're
probably the way to do
not
that.
necessarily in the town center, it could be something
Or it could be someplace else. I'm just saying is that it might be,
But the whole town would increase the mill levy.
all residents would presumably have to pay for that as opposed to carving
Yeah, and
out a
just to
specific
clarify,
area.
if the town votes to raise the taxes, nothing you're doing here today would not allow you to raise taxes townwide, including on the
Yeah, so I'm
center.
not a brawler, and I don't play one on television, so I just want to make sure that that's
I'll go to
true.
Sura, but we would, this is something we would address in the cost sharing agreement.
Okay. And similarly, if the, say, I mean, I understand the state backfills money that would otherwise go into the school district by, for reasons that are completely inscrutable to me, but that's what they do. But, for example, things change, and there's a mill levy override to build pre-K sites, you know what I mean? We'd want to say, I think we'd look pretty bad if we built a pre-K site and we're not paying for it, at least part of the town. So it'd be the same sort of carve-out. I mean, you should have all the money that we said that we would do through the current mill levy, but if there's these special elections occur, that we want to make sure that that's, once again, maybe this is all taken care of, but I don't want to lose that opportunity.
I'm just taking notes
Okay.
for the cost sharing agreement.
I think those are all the questions I had. Trustee Williams?
So with the clock on the TIF, I'm still not fully understanding that, and why that can't be in conjunction with the cost-sharing agreement.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate, and you can speak to this, but say the legislature comes around and says, well, actually the clock is now 15 years and not 25, or it's some X amount, then we would limit ourselves to what we could pay for, and thus what would be built.
The other thing is, I apologize, but the plan amendment that we're doing here tonight was started so long ago that there's a 120-day limit, and the 120 days is up prior to the date that you'll be looking at the cost-sharing agreement.
Oh, I see.
So that in itself is the real issue.
Well, that is a large issue,
The only
because we would
issue.
have to start again.
Okay. And
After waiting 2 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And if there were legal questions I would want to have answered, how would I go about that?
Related to
the cost sharing or
To this, exactly.
Go ahead.
And if it's something
Well,
that
If
is-
it's something that you don't want you want to do privately?
we could have a
That is correct.
brief executive session, I suppose. It's not posted for that, but
It's not
No.
posted for that.
So is there any possibility that we could have this, we could postpone this to September 3rd, Tuesday, and have an executive session?
I won't be here on Tuesday, so.
I won't
I'm not going to be here either, so.
September 10th is the deadline, so,
So
Well, and
maybe
I'm
you
still
could-
trying to
maybe you could
accommodate
ask,
that.
I understand.
So maybe you could, if you have some particular questions, maybe we could go through that, or,
No, it would definitely have to be an executive session.
okay. Any other thoughts from the board?
Well, in order for this to pass, we need a 4-0 vote, since there are only 4 of us here today, or no?
It's just a simple majority.
Are you sure? That's not what you were told last week.
No, it is.
Simple majority?
Yes.
Okay.
Randy Goodson again on behalf of the applicant. I just want to emphasize that, we're really risk averse, and this 120-day time period is absolute. No ifs or buts, no national holidays, no emergencies. Larry and I were doing a deal once, and President Nixon died. There was a national holiday on the day we were supposed to close escrow. And so things happen. And we really don't want to push it to September 3rd, and then, and even on September 10th, it has to be done by 5 p.m. on September 10th. So we're really hoping that we can, if there's tough questions, please ask us. We'd like to, we're here to, we have all of our professionals here. Of course, we've shown you, and we will continue to work with you on the issues that you have. But if they're legal issues, we'd like to do our best to address them. I think with the town attorney and we have at least 3 attorneys here. I'm sure we can answer your questions, and if they're...
As a physician, that causes me some angst, just to let you know.
I'm not trying to kill this. I'm trying to be accommodating, and I by the time frame, absolutely, no question. But I really would like an executive session.
We could, one option is we could take a 5-minute break, and Trustee Williams, you could speak with Kendra.
You and I could speak privately, it wouldn't be part of a meeting.
It's not an executive
I wouldn't be
session.
able to have an executive session.
But then they wouldn't be privy to that information.
Exactly.
And I think that is not going to be helpful. I mean, it might be helpful to me, but there could be some information that they need to know as well.
Well, maybe you could take a 5-minute break and just see where that goes, and then if it's more important, then you can address it otherwise. Does that sound
I
right?
personally am okay with you taking 5 minutes and speaking to the
I
attorney.
think that's
Yeah.
fine. To me with Kendra.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
That's fine with us, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we can talk, and if it doesn't solve the issue, it doesn't solve the issue.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
fair enough.
So with that, we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll get something to drink.
that cost estimate, good minds think alike, he said to point out that that cost estimate was not from the 2012 plan. That cost estimate was from our initial look at
What the plan was.
at a comprehensive plan that, when we first started looking at the property, we completely reevaluated the market and what the opportunities were with the development. So that it was not based on the 2012 plan at all. Well, maybe not at all. There were some utility calculations and off-site improvements that were perhaps based on the 2012 plan.
So-
As far as on-site,
Can I ask one question before you continue? And please do continue.
Sure.
Clarify again what it was based off of?
it was based upon our initial plan. If you recall, when we first became interested in the Superior Town Center, we had a meeting with the board to identify board priorities and to really clarify and understand the plans that had been approved and appreciate receptiveness to changes to those plans. And at that point, we hired Calthorpe Associates to revise a plan or to prepare our first look at the plan. It was something that we did in a relatively short period of time. And so the cost estimate was based upon that plan, and but not the 2012 plan. So I just want to point that out. Having said that, staff, we've revised our numbers, and we're at about $135 million, and staff had separately provided their numbers. We never really reconciled. We didn't get to that point of they provided their numbers, we provided ours. We just kind of left it there. But I don't think there's a disagreement because it has to do with the calculation of infrastructure. And when staff prepared their estimate, they didn't change that infrastructure cost. They changed other components. But that range is 125 to 135 million. As staff pointed out, a big component of that is the structured parking, and that's where we just don't know where we're going to be. We know we can't have surface parking lots. We can't have them because it won't achieve the plan that we've talked about as far as a pedestrian-oriented, dense, mixed-use, transit-oriented development project. So we need to make sure and not handcuff ourselves from achieving the success that we're all hoping for. The more successful the project is, the more increment will be generated by the project, but also the greater the public improvement costs will be, predominantly as it relates to structured parking, but also if we are, when we are successful in reaching the higher levels of the range of the office and commercial and mixed use and square footages, that will necessitate not just more structured parking, but also higher utility costs. And at the same time, the property tax increment will be going up. And that's sort of the great thing about the structure that we have and the structure that the town and the board and the staff set up is our interests are completely aligned. Our interests are aligned with, we have to advance, whatever the cost of public infrastructure is, we have to advance that first and hope to get paid back later. We get a really good hope certificate, but we have to put up hard cash with guarantees and opening checkbooks that's real, and then we get a hope certificate to get it paid back. We don't want to spend $1 of public improvement costs that we don't have to spend. We've had this discussion over, there's some sewer alternatives that could save some money that may or may not be in the town's exact best interest, but it would save money. That's something that we're working through with staff. We're saving your money, but they're improvements, and it's a good example. These are improvements that may be in the best interest of the town because it would allow us to send sewer to the town's sewer facility versus to Louisville's sewer facility. So we are trying to save money, to lower public improvement costs, to reduce the amount of the bonds, And that, we're working through with staff that thinks, gee, it's probably better to build this sewer pump station and let it, the benefits of doing that accrue to the town. So there's a healthy conflict there. But our interests are absolutely aligned. Overall, in the big picture of the public improvements, we're not looking to spend $1 on public improvements that we don't have to spend, just like you, as a business owner, wouldn't go, incur expenses just to get a tax write-off, right? Because you don't recover all the expenses. But if it's an investment in your business, if it's an investment in Superior Town Center, we'll incur those expenses in public infrastructure, hoping to get reimbursed. Just like as a business owner, you would, incur an investment in your business, not just for the tax write-off, because it's going to add to your business. Our interests are absolutely aligned with yours. Our interests are aligned with lower interest rates, with more efficient, the most efficient issuance structure. Having said all of that, if we have provided numbers with staff and we're willing to look at reducing the maximum cap, we're concerned about reducing it too low, because if you reduce it too low, then we're just not going to go for maximizing the project. I mean, parking structures, we're in a market along the 36 that's a surface parking market. In a surface parking market, if you want to compete, you want to get the retailers and the office users, they can't pay for the structured parking. And structured parking, in that instance, it's sometimes I put it in the context of you can rent one office, but you got to build two. You got to rent one office for the worker, and you got to build one office for the worker and one for the worker's car. That worker can go into Broomfield and just rent the office, and go into a lot of other places and just rent the office. Here, we have to build the office and the parking stall. So we want to keep working with the board to make the project successful, as we've talked about. Candidly, I don't think the cap is, we're not going to go spend money, just spend money, because if we're not increasing the assessed valuation of the project, we're not going to get reimbursed. So to just go spend money without a reimbursement is, we have 25 years of the TIF, which is the majority of the reimbursement. I mean, I think the action today is really holding our feet to the fire. We sincerely evaluated staging the approval of the TIF, doing it in multiple phases, delaying it and doing it later, and we evaluated the political risk that was described earlier and our financial risk relative to securing the financing for the project, and recognized we need to have this approved now.
So, so you are agreeable to working with town staff in coming closer to their numbers and closer to reality of what the project, what you think the project is going to cost, correct?
Yes.
And then the other thing I wanted to kind of clarify is, so the metro districts are in addition to that. And
in addition to what?
in addition to the TIF amount, let's say the
Yes,
TIF.
but not the cap. The cap is an absolute cap that crosses both TIF and metro districts, crosses them all together. It's an absolute cap, because keep in mind, regardless of whether it's TIF or metro district, we only get reimbursed for public improvements, improvements that we're going to construct and contribute and give to the town for ownership, or give to the metro district for ownership.
Okay, that's the first time I've heard that. So let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 78 million, okay?
The
And
total
the cap-
public improvements.
Let's just say the cap is...
Can we pick a higher, for argument's sake?
Hypothetical here. Higher is mine. We hit the cap at 78 million. And the metro districts are implemented. That is not, and so this is the first time I've heard this, because I had not heard it in this particular way. So the cap is 78 million, let's say. And we've got this TIF over here that is collecting the money and doling it out. And we have the SMDs that are collecting the money from the property owners, right? And it's going to pay the TIF, correct? or that, the bonds.
Not really correct.
You're not calling it TIF, but the money,
Yeah.
78
Keep in mind,
million.
it's all a form of a tax that's all collected by the tax assessor and then distributed pursuant to these agreements.
All right, let me put it this way. How about we just take we'll just strip all that,
It's a tax.
mumbo
property
jumbo
tax.
in my opinion, and we've got 78 million cap, right? And all the different entities that we have to use to get to that 78 million don't go above that, correct? That's what you just said, right?
That's what a cap.
I'm not
That's
following
what,
you.
okay, let's say the cap is 78 million, and we have all these entities that we're implementing, the SMDs, the TIF, that cap can't go over 78 million. Is that correct?
I'm not following what you're saying.
Okay,
Larry's going to. So in the agreement that was approved at the beginning of this process, there was an absolute cap on the amount of bonds we could issue at 145. That would be repaid from both the tax revenues in the Metro District and from the TIF. The TIF had a separate cap that that those revenues would pay back no more than 75% of the 145, which was 109, because that figure comes from that 110. So the total cap was 145, of which the revenues coming from the SURA could pay back up to 110. So there were two separate caps. I think the cap you're most interested in is what's the total and maximum amount of debt. I don't think
the bottom line.
the bottom line for you, I don't think is really which tax is paying it back. I get that. I sort of agree with you when I think about it. So the original agreement we entered into earlier in the year was that we could not issue more than $145 million
No matter where it comes from.
of debt, no matter which, to be paid back from both sources.
Any source. We'll just
But those
say,
are only two
let's just
sources.
say any
Those are only two
source.
sources. That's right. We can't issue more than $140 million of bonds, period.
Okay. And this 109 only was the cap for the TIF, not the
That's
Metro
correct.
districts.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So now let's go back to, we're all agreeable to reducing this
Well,
cap.
Well, I guess I'd say two things. One, obviously, that's a conversation that relates to the cost sharing agreement. I think everyone knows that. It
Correct.
has nothing to do with what you approve. And when we get there, I guess I'd say a couple of things. One, on the one hand, this is candidly an agreement that was approved by all of you with that cap that got us started, upon which we invested a lot of money. Now, having said that,
We didn't know what we were buying before we put the money out there. That's all I'm going to say. Having said that, you can continue.
okay, well,
Sorry, but, I mean, fair is fair.
in any case,
I don't buy a car and then later find out how much it is,
No, but I think.
But
I
I'm
think
glad
we
we're
agree that-
agreeable.
And we, from our perspective, when we first started the process and the service plan was approved, we relied on it. It may be something the board didn't fully understand.
But as I may say, that
But we are amenable to trying to work with the town and the board to try and do something that, because
our interests are aligned.
well, our interests are aligned.
Exactly.
Candidly, when we get there, I'm not sure it's in your interest to limit, when we get to the cost sharing agreement, what I would propose perhaps is a somewhat lower limit than the 145 as a separate contractual agreement we'd make with the board. I'm not sure you should prevent that amount of issuance if you decide to allow it, and what we would suggest is a somewhat lower limit unless we end up building significantly more parking structures or something like that, or the board otherwise approves it. Because you're taking away, I think, your own flexibility. I think we are willing to somewhat reduce that cap.
So how do we move forward with that?
Well, so I think
How do we
the
get
thing
there?
to do is, what we'd like to suggest is that none of this conversation is relevant to
Tonight.
the amendment.
Right.
None of this is relevant to the amendment.
But that's where I'm having an issue,
Well,
with the clock.
I don't see how that is, though.
It is an issue, because if I'm going to start the clock right now, I want to know that our interests are aligned and we are in agreement and we're going to work together on getting to an agreement that we can all be proud of. Did you hear me?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not sure. We obviously have to reach agreement with you on a cost sharing agreement, or we're not going to have a deal. So we, this has to come first. And as a matter of,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
this has to come first, I think, before we can negotiate the cost sharing agreement, because this cost sharing agreement has no effect unless this is
Okay.
approved.
I mean, tonight we're not negotiating the cost.
But for me,
That's-
knowing how you feel and how you 100% want to work with the town in this regard with TIF, I feel more comfortable.
Good. Appreciate that. Good.
Can I ask a procedural question? And maybe I just am assuming this, but I hate to assume things, so I guess I should be clear. So how I envision this going forward is that FDPs will be processed and that the qualified public infrastructure will be identified within the FDPs. Does that sound
Yes.
right? And that's how it would then flow into the bonds and then reimbursement agreements and whatnot.
Some of that will also be addressed in the cost sharing agreement.
Okay. So.
But are
we
you
won't-
saying you don't care to know the cost up front for the whole picture? You'd rather just see it in piecemeal?
No, I'm just saying is that I think that that's how so the answer is yes, I am interested in that to get an idea of what we're talking about, but we won't really know until the exact FDP and the exact building
I get that.
happens until we
Yeah.
until we can figure that out. So I assume what we're saying here is that, understanding there's some room for negotiation about what the cap would be, is that those qualified infrastructure costs would be paid for on an ongoing basis until we got to, say, FDP number 97.5 and we had hit our cap. Is that sort of what happened, and then everything after that would not be reimbursed?
I'm not sure I understood that, I'm sorry.
So we have to identify the infrastructure
Right,
that will qualify for reimbursement.
right.
Obviously, for the first many phases of this, we'll never get close to what the cap is.
Right.
100% of all of that's going to be paid for through the TIF that's generated from those parts of the project. Correct?
No, if I may, in the first instance, we pay for the infrastructure. because we can't, as a
I
practical
get that,
matter,
yeah.
sell bonds until we build the real estate.
Yeah, yeah.
So we come forward with an FDP, the cost sharing agreement, and correct me if I get this wrong, will identify items that are allowable to be
Right.
reimbursed. In the first instance, we would front that money,
Correct.
and then assuming the markets were amenable and the collateral, the bond market was happy with the real estate, then we would sell bonds and reimburse ourselves or use those funds for the next stage of infrastructure.
But I just add that you are correct in that as the FDPs come along, we'll have a cost estimate for all the public infrastructure by FDP. So you could add those up and say, okay, now they're over 100 million, and start scrutinizing it more. Or, you pick, you'll be scrutinizing each one because ultimately you have to accept the infrastructure and you have to approve our invoicing for reimbursement of public infrastructure. That is subject to the discretion of the town staff and the board.
Well, I'd like for that process to be pretty clear-cut about how that
Sure.
happens.
Yes.
In addition, so the process for reimbursement is, on the FDP, we identify what the infrastructure...
So this is what I'm envisioning. The FDP, you identify what the infrastructure is that would qualify for reimbursement. Then the town staff says, yeah, I agree. Or town staff says, well, you really can't include X, Y, or
Well,
Z.
then we go construct it. Then we have a third-party engineer verify that the costs we're seeking reimbursement for were truly public improvements, and comply with the state law and the town code and the FDP. And then we submit that to the town staff. The town staff reviews all this work that we produce, and they agree. and then we're eligible for reimbursement.
Okay, so if I could
It
just...
really helps to understand the process when because that has never really been explained publicly like you are doing it tonight, so I appreciate it.
And it'd be good as maybe this is an attachment to the cost-sharing agreement, just so we know.
It's actually in the cost.
Is it in there? I mean, I haven't...
Well, again, we're not there yet.
So thank you for thinking of that, but I just want to make sure that
I'm jumping ahead, but it's good to
No, I
understand.
understand, and they're good questions, and these procedures are in the cost sharing agreement.
Okay. Then if they're there, then I'm good.
Or will be, I should say, when you see it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so moving forward then, how are we moving forward? And what does that process look like?
Well, I think the process
Of course
is
it's gonna
whether or
go
not
on
we're
this.
going to approve this tonight, based upon...
I get
your-
that.
Yeah, so...
I mean,
But next is the date is what for the cost-sharing agreement? It's the first meeting?
September 30th.
30th?
3-0?
Okay.
Zero.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So you have a whole month,
Right.
and what is that process going to look like? How am I going to see that, know it, feel it,
Well, we could...
understand it?
Yeah, we were talking about
before
this...
September 30th?
Kendra and I were talking about this a little bit. We could have a work session with the board on a off night, if you wanted to go
That would be very
through.
helpful.
Yeah, I think that probably would
That would be very
make sense
helpful.
as soon as you have that agreement hammered out.
Okay. So we'll start working on dates then.
And can you also give us updates, and even if it's possible that the board could even be at the table of some of this negotiation? Is that even possible?
It's a little unwieldy. My suggestion is you let us try to hammer out the best deal that we can
Yeah.
get, and then we have work session, we go through it with you, and if there are other items that you agree with or disagree with, or, then we move forward from there.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is we give ourselves enough time.
I'd rather do that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you think that work session could happen?
Well, I don't know. I have to look.
You're going on the 23rd.
23rd.
So it has to be before that.
No, I'd like to do it before the week before.
Yeah.
Before the week before.
Like the week of the 16th sometime? Is that
Yeah.
possible?
Well, you'll
2
look,
weeks out would be great.
we'll look for dates.
That way we,
Understand the cost-sharing.
No.
Yeah.
no. It's not. You can
So you'll look for dates. Yeah.
Okay,
So the 16th is an off Monday.
Right.
I'm available.
I'm available. That would be, if you're here, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay.
Well,
So you will have information, you'll have work
Yes.
together
Yes.
by that date.
Executive session? No.
No, not an executive, a work session,
doesn't- this
it's
is-
not an executive session.
Our work session is
Would you like for us to have an executive
either
session?
an informal meeting that we have that the public is always welcome to, but it is where the board discusses and works out,
Just so we don't do all the brain
issues.
damage
It's an
in one
educational-
night.
And there's no voting or anything
Yeah.
like that occurring.
I just want to point out, maybe your town attorney can clarify if I get something wrong here, but we're going to be relying upon a legal opinion from your bond counsel, Sherman and Howard. And so, as you're contemplating your schedules, please, make sure that you have them. I'm sure your staff would do that, but if you're working on scheduling meetings and things like that, we need to have their opinion on the cost-sharing agreement.
We will make sure that they're in the process, involved.
And when we talk about bonds, and it's not really related to us since we're not issuing any debt, but we usually get I guess we'd get the bond opinion from a third party that wouldn't be related to that, or is that that's the bond counsel is the third party?
Bond counsel, yes. Any opinion we need, the opinion is on the pledge, so yeah, it will be from Sherman and Howard.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, and could you repeat what you just said before the mayor started speaking? You were going somewhere, and I was going to ask you a question, and I can't remember.
Was that the motion to approve? I was...
Your bond counsel, right? You were discussing your bond counsel, right?
Our bond counsel.
Your bond counsel.
That's right.
You were talking about scheduling a work session and things like that, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that your bond counsel has to, well, they should participate, but it'd be really a disappointment if you all negotiated an agreement with us and your bond counsel didn't see it until, September 29th, and then they said, oh, we have a problem. So we'd like them to be involved at every step of the way, because timing is really important.
And
Okay, so that's a great reminder to the staff.
Which I think we just...
I can't help you there.
Yeah, I was under the impression that you were working on a work session with the board and the staff on
We are.
terms that would be important for your bond counsel to participate.
And
You are correct, sir.
that is noted now. Thank you. Okay.
Anything else?
Just another clarification. So did I hear that this isn't necessarily to lock us into that 145, that we could still negotiate that possibly to 125 to 135 or somewhere thereabouts?
If the developer's willing, yes.
Again, I think there's some language here, someone's saying that the 145 figure is already in some of the Metro District papers. I think what we're going to suggest, to the extent we lower the limit, that it be a separate contractual agreement we make with you that would be just equally as binding, but that you not reduce your own authority to issue those bonds if you chose to.
We're not issuing anything.
Authority
To reimburse.
The 145 you already approved in the district service plan. It's done. That is the absolute outer limit of what the district can issue in bonds. But a cap on how much the town participates in terms of contributing TIF, or how much money the project can spend on eligible public improvements, you can limit those in future agreements. And this that you're approving or maybe voting on tonight has nothing to do with either one of those things.
Right, okay.
The 145 or any future cap that you might want to impose on the project. Both of those are totally separate from what you're doing tonight.
Right. Just
That's what I was trying to say.
Wait.
Me too.
All right. Let me see if I understood what you said. So the absolute cap, which is 145 million, there's no way to change that.
There is, but only by an amendment to a service.
One could amend the service plan, but 145 is everything that the district can issue ever backed by any revenue source. It's not.
Right.
So if after all of this is built that you want to build, and you've contributed whatever you agree to contribute, whatever that number is, whether it's 75% of 100 million or whatever, and later on the district says, geez, we need to add another parking structure, and we now could take the mill levy that we previously had pledged to those other bonds and use it for a second parking structure, we can issue new bonds. If they still have room in between where they are and the 145 million cap, they can do so with no contribution whatsoever from the town, no TIF, nothing.
But if you don't have room?
What's that?
If you don't have room, then...
If they don't have room, they'd have to come back to you and ask for an amendment to the service plan, or go to a vote of what will then become the district voters, because people will live there, and ask them to approve an increase in the district debt limit.
I see.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm corrected. You'd have to do both. You'd have to amend the service plan.
She is speaking at the mic.
Yeah. So you're okay. Okay, that helps.
Okay, so then I just wanted to clarify one more thing. Part of what the negotiations are determining a good estimate of what the public improvements are for this particular project. Not any other, but this one.
Right.
And so that way we have a better estimate, and I'm not, asking for exact costs, but a much better estimate. And that's where we're negotiating. Am I understanding that correct?
I think just partly. We're still not going to have that much better costs. We don't know if all of our parking garages are subterranean parking garages, which would be even more expensive, or if we don't know what the design of the office buildings will be, of a lot of the retail. So we're still, it's a big, swag is a term professionals that you pay to put these numbers together use, which includes wild and guess. So, we're still we don't have the detailed block-by-block plans. We don't know what's being built.
Right.
And that matters. It matters a lot. So we're trying to leave the leeway so that we can build as good of a project as possible without constraints, with the ultimate alignment of interests, and that whatever we're building, we need to make sure it's going to add assessed valuation. The town gets a better product, and we have, with that assessed valuation, the ability to get reimbursed for a portion of the public infrastructure that was used to construct it.
But where we were and where we are now, we can definitely make a better estimate than where we were.
Yes.
Yes. The other point I'd make, I think it ought to be obvious, is as we go along in the project, given that we're going to have a cap of whatever it is, as a general statement, it's in our interest to keep the costs as low as possible. It's also in our parochial interest, because the less we spend on the first phase, the more we still have available for future phases. This is an upper limit, but it's not money we want to spend. We want to keep the cost of the public infrastructure down, just like you do. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. I would entertain a motion then.
Just for clarification, the motion
Yes.
should be as amended, because there were the two additions that trustee Williams made, and then I fixed the typo.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Can you clarify the addendums or the amendments?
Oh, sure.
Thank you,
Let me
sorry.
find them.
We had towns.
We added the word town in two places, and I fixed the typo on page 2.
All right. With that, I close the public hearing. Thank you for reminding me.
As amended, I make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-44, Series 2013, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a substantial modification to the Superior Urban Renewal Plan, authorizing implementation of a tax increment financing in a portion of the urban renewal area.
Motion by Trustee Gregoris. Is there a second? Trustee Hanson? Further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Gregoris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes, as long as we all work together and come to a very good agreement for the cost sharing. So yes.
All right. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Anything else to come before the board this evening? Okay. Seeing none, meeting adjourned.